Hi everyone. I hope you are doing well today. I'm taking a few minutes out while my kids are busy at school and I'm playing with their Legos. I hope they don't mind, but I thought that they would be a good way for us to talk about this Sunday's gospel. Now, I don't know if you've played with Legos, but I bet that you played with them some. And I'd like to know which your favorite Lego is, or what Lego you think is the most important Lego. Is it the yellow Lego here more important than this long red Lego, or this little Lego with a hole in it, or this short little yellow Lego? I ask you because Jesus got a similar question in this week's gospel. Somebody came up to him and said, "Hey, Lord, I have a question." And Jesus says, "Okay, ask you a question." And the person asked kind of a tricky question. He said, "What is the most important law or rule that God has for us?" Now, if you think about it, you have the 10 Commandments. Those are 10 rules right there. But those are kind of the big rules. God also provided a whole bunch of other rules at other places in the Bible on kind of how to live your life and many, many aspects of your life. Kind of like your teacher gives you a whole bunch of rules for the classroom, or your parents give you rules for what you do around the house. And if your parents said what rule is most important, or if you asked your parents what rule is most important, you know, put your dishes in the dishwasher, or remember to put away your school bag, I think that your parents would say, well, both of the rules are important. And if you said, well, if they said put away your dishes, then some naughty kids, I'm sure not you, would say, oh, so it doesn't matter as much about the school bag. And that was kind of the tricky part that this person was putting Jesus in. If Jesus says, well, you shouldn't steal, then the person would say, well, so stealing is worse than hurting somebody, or stealing is worse than not going to church on Sunday? And Jesus thought about it for just a moment. And he said, well, the most important rule is love God above everything else. And the second most important rule is to love your neighbor as yourself. And the guy that was talking to Jesus was kind of like not sure what to do with this. I'm sure he was about to ask a question about, oh, so as long as I love God, I can steal or whatnot. And Jesus then explained that the thing is that you'll notice in my little Lego structure, you've got two pieces at the bottom here. Just like Jesus gave us two laws, two rules that were the most important rules. And you'll notice that everything else in my little Lego structure is built on top of those first two Legos. If I take one away, the structure might fall over. It might not work. It probably wouldn't work. Right? So Jesus said, the reason that these two are the most important isn't because these other ones aren't important. It's because everything else is built on those two. that if you love God with all your heart, mind, and soul, and if you love your neighbor as yourself, then you're not going to steal from them. You're not going to lie about them. You're not going to hurt them. You're going to go to church if you can. And all the other rules are based on that. And you want to know something? I'm willing to bet that if you look at the rules around your house, that picking up after yourself, that's based on the rules that came before. Because if you love God with all your heart, mind, and soul, and you love your neighbor as yourself, if you love everybody as yourself, then you're going to treat your parents properly, which means that when they ask you to help out around the house, you're going to do that. Or if somebody, tells you a piece of gossip and your parents say you shouldn't gossip to each other or you shouldn't whatever, well, that's a good rule, but that's a rule that goes on top of all the other rules. And if you just go down, you'll find love God with all your heart, mind, and soul, and love your neighbor as yourself. And you'll know something is a good rule if you go down and find those two rules at the bottom. If you don't find those two rules at the bottom, then maybe it's not a good rule. And if following the rule breaks one of these other rules, maybe it's not a rule that's working the way it should. So what Jesus was telling this man who asked him this kind of tricky question is that if you start with the two basics, if you start there and you keep that in mind, then everything else will come out of that. But if you take one away, it's gonna tip over. It's not gonna work. And if you take both away, then it's really not gonna work. So if you ever find yourself wondering what you should do, what God and Jesus would want you to do, you don't have to always remember all the 10 Commandments or all the other stuff. You just need to remember, love God and love thy neighbor. And if you have that in your heart and mind, then all the other proper stuff, all the other good stuff will come out of that. Well, it's a nice day outside, and I hope you have a time later to enjoy it. And I hope you have a lovely weekend. Stay well. Bye.